Hello! This is the Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster, Chapter 19, The Return of Rhyme and Reason. Sailing past three of the tallest peaks and just over the outstretched arms of the grasping demons, they reached the ground and landed just behind the mob with a sudden jolt.
"Quick!" urged Tok. "Follow me! We'll have to run for it."
With the princesses still on his back, he galloped down the rocky trail, and not a moment too soon, for pounding down the mountainside in a cloud of clinging dust and a chorus of chilling shrieks came all the loathsome creatures who choose to live in ignorance and who had waited so very impatiently. Thick black clouds hung heavily overhead as they fled through the darkness, and Milo, looking back for just a moment, could see the awful shapes coming closer and closer. Just to the left, and not very far away, were the triple demons of compromise, one tall and thin, one short and fat, and the third looking exactly like the other two. As always, they moved in ominous circles, for if one said, "Here!" the other said, "There!" and the third agreed perfectly with both of them. And since they always settled their differences by doing what none of them really wanted, they rarely got anywhere at all, and neither did anyone they met. Jumping clumsily from boulder to boulder, and catching hold with his cruel curving claws, was the horrible hopping Hindsight, a most unpleasant fellow whose eyes were in the rear and whose rear was out front. He invariably leaped before he looked and never cared where he was going as long as he knew why he shouldn't have gone there in the first place. And most terrifying of all, directly behind, inching along like a giant soft-shelled snail with blazing eyes and wet, anxious mouths, came the gorgons of hate and malice, leaving a trail of slime behind them and moving much more quickly than you would think.
"Faster!" shouted Tok. "They're closing in!"
Down the heights they raced, and the humbug, with one hand on his hat and the other flailing desperately in the air, Milo running as he had never run before, and the demons just a little bit faster than that. And off on the right, his heavy, bulbous body lurching dangerously on spindly legs which barely supported him, came the overbearing know-it-all, talking continuously, a dismal demon who was mostly mouths, and he was ready at a moment's notice to offer misinformation on any subject. And while he often tumbled heavily, it was never he who was hurt, but rather the unfortunate person upon whom he fell. Next to him, and just a little bit behind, came the gross exaggeration, whose grotesque features and thoroughly unpleasant manners were hideous to see, and whose rows of wicked teeth were made only to mangle the truth. They hunted together and were bad luck to anyone they caught. Riding along on the back of anyone who would carry him was the threadbare excuse, a small, pathetic little figure whose clothes were worn and tattered and who mumbled the same things again and again in a low but piercing voice.
"Well, I've been sick, but the page was torn out. I missed the bus. Well, no one else did it. Well, I've been sick, but the page was torn out. I've missed the bus, but no one else did it."
He looked quite harmless and friendly, but once he grabbed on, he never let go. Closer and closer they came, bumping and jolting each other, clawing and snorting in their eager fury. Tok staggered bravely along with rhyme and reason. Milo's lungs now felt ready to burst as he stumbled down the trail, and the humbug was slowly falling behind. Gradually, the path grew broader and more flat as they began to reach the bottom of the mountain and turned back toward the lands of wisdom. Ahead lay light and safety, but perhaps just a bit too far away. And down came the demons from Everywhere, frenzied creatures of darkness lurching wildly toward their prey. And from off in the rear, the terrible Trivium and the wobbly gelatinous giant urged them on with glee, and pounding forward with a rush came the ugly Dilemma, snorting steam and looking intently for someone to catch on the ends of his long, pointed horns while his hooves bit eagerly into the ground. The exhausted humbug swayed and tottered on his rubbery legs, a look of longing on his anguished face.
I don't think I can.
He gasped as a jagged slash of lightning ripped open the sky and the thunder stole his words. Closer and closer loomed the demons as the desperate chase neared its end. Then, gathering themselves for one final leap, they prepared to engulf first the bug, and then the boy, and then lastly the dog and the two passengers. They rose as one! And suddenly stopped, as if frozen in midair, unable to move, staring ahead with their own terror. Milo slowly raised his weary head, and there, on the horizon, for as far as the eye could see, stood the massed armies of the lands of wisdom, the sun glistening from their swords and shields and their bright banners flapping in the breeze. For a moment, everything was silent. And then thousands of trumpets, and then 1,000 more, and then like an ocean wave, one long line of horsemen advanced, slowly at first, and then faster and faster, until with a gallop and a shout, which was music to Milo's ears, they swept forward towards the horrified demons. There in the lead was King Azaz, with dazzling armor embossed with every letter in the alphabet. And with him was the mathematician, brandishing a freshly sharpened staff. From his tiny wagon, Dr. Discord hurled explosion after explosion to the delight of the Soundkeeper, while the busy din collected them again almost at once to be relaunched. And, in honor of the occasion, Chroma the Great led his orchestra in a stirring display of patriotic colors. Everyone Milo had met during his journey had come to help. The men from the marketplace, the miners of Digitopolis, and all the good people from the valley and the forest. The spelling bee buzzed excitedly overhead, shouting,
Charles, C-H-A-R-G, Charles, C-H-A-R-G.
Canby, who, as everyone knew, was as cowardly as could be, came all the way from Conclusions to show he was also just as brave. And even Officer Shrift, mounted proudly on a low, long dachshund, galloping grimly along. Cringing back with fear, the monsters of ignorance turned in flight, and with anguished cries too horrible to ever truly forget, returned to the damp, dark places from which they came. The humbug sighed with relief, and Milo and the princesses prepared to greet the victorious army. "Well done," stated the Duke of Definition, dismounting and grasping Milo's hand warmly. "Fine job," seconded the Minister of Meaning. "Good work," added the Count of Connotation. "Congratulations," proposed the Earl of Essence. "Cheers," commended the Undersecretary of Understanding. And since that's exactly what everyone felt like doing, that's exactly what everyone did. "Huzzah! It's we who should thank," began Milo, but when the shouting had subsided, but before he could finish, the 5 of them had raised an enormous scroll. With fanfare and trumpets and drums, they stated, "Henceforth and forthwith, let it be known by all men that rhyme and reason reign once more in wisdom." The 2 princesses bowed, gratefully, warmly kissed their 2 brothers, and they all agreed that a very fine thing had happened. "And furthermore," continued the proclamation, "the boy named Milo, the dog named Tock, and the insect hereinafter referred to as the humbug are hereby declared to be heroes of the realm." Cheer after cheer after cheer filled the air, and even the bug seemed a little bit embarrassed at having so much attention paid to him. "Therefore," concluded the Duke, "in honor of their glorious deeds, a royal holiday is declared. Let there be parades through every city in the land, and a gala carnival of 3 days' duration consisting of jousts, games, feasts, and follies." The 5 cabinet members then rolled up the large parchment, and with many more bows and flourishes, retired. Swift horsemen carried the news to every corner of the kingdom, and as the parade slowly wound its way through the entire countryside, crowds of people gathered to cheer it along. Garlands of flowers flung and hung from every house and shop and carpeted the streets. Even the air shimmered with excitement, and shutters closed for many years were thrown open to let in the brilliant sunlit sunshine where it hadn't shone in so long. Milo, Tock, and a very subdued humbug sat proudly in the royal carriage with Azaz, the mathematician, and the 2 princesses. The parade stretched for miles in both directions. As the cheering for hours continued, Rhyme leaned forward and touched Milo very gently on the arm. "They're shouting for you," she said with a smile. "I could never have done it," he objected, "without everyone's help." "That may be true," said Reason gravely, "but you had the courage to try, and what you can do is often simply a matter of what you will do."
"That's why," said Azaz, "there was one very important thing about your quest that we couldn't discuss until you returned."
I do remember that," said Milo eagerly. "Tell me now."
"It was impossible,"
said the king, looking at the mathematician.
"Completely impossible,"
said the mathematician, looking back at the king.
Do you mean..."
stammered the bug, who suddenly felt a bit faint.
"Yes, indeed," they repeated together. "But if we'd told you that, then you might not have gone. And as you've discovered, so many things are possible, as long as you simply don't know that they are impossible."
For the remainder of the ride, Milo did not utter a sound. Finally, when they'd reached a broad, flat plain, midway between Dictionopolis and Digitopolis, somewhat to the right of the Valley of Sound and a little bit to the left of the Forest of Sight, the long line of carriages and horsemen stopped, and the great carnival began. Gaily striped tents and pavilions sprang up everywhere as the workmen scurried around like ants. Within minutes, there were race courses and grandstands, sideshows and refreshment booths, gaming fields, Ferris wheels, banners, bunting, and bedlam almost without pause. The mathematician provided a continuous display of brilliant fireworks made up of exploding numbers which multiplied and divided with breathtaking results. The colors, of course, being supplied by Chroma, and the noise by a deliriously happy Dr. Discord. Thanks to the soundkeeper, there was music and laughter, and for very brief moments, even a little silence. Alec Bings set up an enormous telescope and invited everyone to see the other side of the moon. The humbug wandered through the crowd, accepting congratulations and recounting with great detail his brave exploits, most of which gained immeasurable detail just in the retelling and the retelling and the retelling. And each evening, just at sunset, a royal banquet was held. There was everything imaginable to eat. King Azaz had ordered a special supply of delicious words in all flavors, and for those who liked exotic foods, in all languages as well. The math magician had provided innumerable platters of division dumplings, which Milo was very careful to avoid. For no matter how many you ate, when you finished, there were more on your plate than when you began. And of course, following the meal came songs and epic poems and speeches in praise of the princesses and the 3 gallant adventurers who had rescued them. King Azaz and the math magician pledged that every year at this same time they would lead their armies to the mountains of ignorance until not one demon remained. And everyone agreed that no finer carnival for no finer reason had ever been held in wisdom. But even things as fine as all that must end at some time. And late on the afternoon of the 3rd day, the tents were struck, the pavilions were folded up, and everything was packed, ready to leave. "It's time to go now," said Reason, "for there is much else to do." And as she spoke, Milo suddenly remembered his home. He did want very much to go back, yet somehow he could not bear the thought of leaving. "And so, you must say goodbye," she said, gently patting him on the cheek. "To everyone?" said Milo unhappily. He looked around slowly at all of the friends that he had made. And he looked very hard so as not to forget any of them for even an instant. But mostly, he looked at Talk and the humbug, with whom he had shared so much, the perils, the dangers, the fears, and best of all, the victory. Never had anyone had two more steadfast companions. "Can't you both come with me?" he asked, knowing the answer even before it was said.
"I'm afraid not, old man," replied the bug. "I'd like to, but I've arranged a lecture tour which will keep me occupied for years. And they do need a watchdog here,"
barked Talk sadly. Milo embraced the bug, who, in his most typical fashion, was heard to mumble gruffly, "Bah!" but whose damp eyes told quite a different story. Then the boy threw his arms around Talk's neck and for just a moment held on very tightly. "Thank you for everything that you've taught me," said Milo to everybody as a tear rolled down his cheek.
"And thank you for what you've taught us,"
said the king, and as he clasped hands, the little car was brought forward, polished like new. Milo got in, and, with one last look, started down the road, with everyone waving to him. "Goodbye!" he shouted. "Goodbye! I will be back!"
"Goodbye!" shouted Azaz. "Always remember the importance of words." "And numbers!" added the math magician, forcefully. "Surely you don't think numbers are as important as words?" he heard Azaz shout from a distance. "Is that so? Well," replied the math magician a little more faintly, "why, if—"
"Oh, dear," thought Milo. "I do hope they don't start it all over again." And in a moment, they had faded from sight and earshot as down the road he dipped and turned and headed for home.